everybody, so today I'm going to share with you 10 of your personal ghost stories. This first story was submitted by Livy in the United States, and this is about the Stomping Man. Basically, her and her family lived on this huge wooded plot of land, and on one side was their house, and on the other was the trailer that they would occasionally rent out to other people. When they weren't renting out the trailer, they used to store their horse tack and supplies. Her sisters and her mother would spend a lot of time in there caring for the tools, taking care of them, cleaning, and basic upkeep on all of the supplies. On her way home one day, she happened to walk by the trailer and noticed a shadow outline of a handprint or a hand on the window. One time her sister was completely alone in the back end of the trailer. The trailer was actually shaped like a very long rectangle. She said she heard what sounded like someone began to start stomping from the opposite side of the trailer that she was at. The stomping started to move down the hallway towards the end of the trailer where her sister was at. And as it got closer and closer to the room, the door was closed, the door actually opened, and then the stomping continued right up to her. Her sister actually didn't even tell anybody about this for a few weeks. And a few weeks later, her mom had the exact same experience. She described the same kind of encounter of basic stomping starting from one end, continuing all the way down the hallway to where her mother was, and it stopped. She didn't tell anybody either. Not too long after that, one of her other sisters had the same thing happen to her. But she had a different reaction than her mother and her other sister. She basically ran out screaming. Eventually they all did share each other's experiences, and that kind of freaked them out that they all kind of validated each other in having the same encounter. Later on, her sister's boyfriend had actually stayed the night by himself in that trailer, and he claimed that while he was there, he heard whispering and heavy pacing back and forth throughout the trailer. This next story comes from Marie-Eve. I hope I said your name right. I know you're French, so sorry. But she is located in Quebec, Canada. Now, she described the location of this encounter. She's working in a little coffee shop in an old house that is made from two parts of different old houses, which was moved and put together in a little town near Montreal. This is her scariest encounter in this coffee shop. In the house, there was a lower balcony that led to her boss's loft, which was on the second floor. Her boss wasn't there a lot, so the stairs that led to the second floor were actually blocked off to the public, and the lights were always off. So from what I gather, every night when they would close, there's about 2 or 3 employees, and they would all sit at the same table, which was under the lower balcony. And since they always met at the same table to close and get ready to end the night, no matter if it was an old employee, new employee, they always experienced a feeling of being watched from the upstairs balcony. One of the scariest nights of closing that she had was when one of the newsgirls was basically really concentrating on counting the money and getting everything together, and she claimed to see something in the lower balcony. It startled her so bad that she actually screamed and fell backwards in her chair. As she was helping the new girl get up from falling over, they hear this loud knocking and banging from the basement door, which is one of those that are outside with the, like, you know, the cellar doors that open like this. I'm assuming that the ones that are outside. The girls stopped breathing. There's the cook, who then grabbed a knife. The cook ran outside with the knife to scare off whoever might be there making all this noise. But when he got out there, there was no one there, no one by the basement door, which was locked and completely sealed up. The knocking actually continued, but they couldn't just leave because they needed to finish closing and basically brave through this scary ordeal in order to just finish doing what they're doing for work, close, and then leave. She even had to go down to the basement to finish doing a couple tasks, and it took all she had to just not break out in tears. The doors of the basement were still shaking, and from the basement looking up at the doors, she could see them moving with the bangs and the knocks. They continued to close shop as fast and quickly as they could, and they finally were able to leave, and that new girl never came back to work at the coffee shop ever again. This next story comes from Naomi in London, England. Home was getting more and more stressful, and she had become very depressed. So she thought it would be easier if she just ran away. Before this, she obviously had packed the essentials, and she purposely left her phone at home so she couldn't be reached and couldn't be found. She walked and walked and kept walking. It became dark, and it was around 8 p.m. In England, 8 p.m. is very dark. There wasn't any people walking around, and not a lot of cars either. She can remember walking down and feeling uneasy and paranoid as she kept seeing another shadow behind her. She was about to turn the corner, and she heard a very calm and hopeful voice say, "Go home, it will get better." This was said right into her ear, but it didn't scare her at all. She actually believed who or whatever it was that said that, and actually turned around and decided to go back home. 2 weeks later, and it seemed like they were the luckiest family in the world. Her dad got a promotion, her mom sold out all of her own cooking books, and she was getting high grades, good grades, and everyone was so much happier. She was looking out the kitchen window one day and just blindly looked out and saw the most beautiful woman she'd ever seen, with long brown hair, big white smile. It was like she was an angel. She looked at her and nodded her head as if to say, "I told you so." She ran out the kitchen and opened the door, but she was gone. She truly believes that this woman was the one who told her to go home. This next story comes from Donna in eastern Pennsylvania. This story is about a small townhouse in the year 2004. And at that time, her 3 sons and daughter, they were around the ages of 13, 11, and 9 at the time. One day, her oldest son ran downstairs to tell her that there was a man in the attic. He explained that while watching his brother play a video game on the Xbox in his sister's room, they noticed a man peering down at them from the attic trap door, which was located in the ceiling of her daughter's closet. The closet door was, in fact, open. She didn't really believe him, so she just went upstairs to inspect the situation, and sure enough, she saw a man up in the attic opening. That just gave me chills. Oh, I still got chills. Ooh. She began to hysterically scream at him, and he then disgustingly slid the door over the opening, and she could hear his footsteps as he walked away. That's really creepy. I got goosebumps. She tried to debunk the situation by asking neighbors if there was any way someone could go from townhouse to townhouse. There were 4 units, side by side, but they assured her, as well as a building inspector a few years later, that when they bought the townhouse from the landlord, that there is a firewall in between each unit and no one could pass through from attic to attic. This next story comes from Anastasia from Croatia. I don't know if I said it right, but I tried. A couple months ago, she was at home with her mom while her dad was working. They live in an apartment building, and in the bathroom, she was removing her makeup when she heard the door of her apartment open and then close. She thought it was her dad coming home from work. She then heard really loud footsteps come from the door all the way through the hallway into the bathroom where she was. She still thought it was her dad because his study room is right across from the bathroom. But she didn't hear anyone go into that room. Instead, she heard someone breathing in front of the door. After a few seconds, she heard something that sounded like a growl. She thought it was really bizarre, so she opened the door to see what was making the noise, but no one was there. Her mom then came from the living room, which is located near the back of the apartment, and asked her if Dad was home. She said no, and her mom then thought maybe she just imagined it, or heard something else, and so she just proceeded to go back into the living room. She didn't even tell her mom what she heard. Her first thought wasn't even paranormal. She thought, not necessarily ghosts, but she thought maybe someone had actually broken into their apartment. She checked every room, every closet, and every place a person could possibly hide. She found no one. It was then that she realized that whatever came into their home was not a person, and whatever did come, didn't leave. This next story comes from Alexandria in South Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. When she was around the age of 4, she began speaking to someone that no one else could see. She would talk and listen to whatever this person had to say. One day, her mother asked who she was speaking to, and she said, Walt and Stella. These are also the names of her great-great-grandparents that she had never met. They had actually passed away shortly after she was born in 1995. Finally, her aunt pulled out a huge family photo with people she had never met or even seen before, but she could point out the 2 people she had been speaking to, Walt and Stella. This next story comes from Nellie, and I hope I said your name right. I really hope. But the location is in Pisa, Italy, and they are originally from the UK. 1 month ago, they moved from UK to Pisa, Italy, to study for a year abroad. She moved into an old house with a gorgeous view of the Leaning Tower, high ceilings, very authentic Italy. Within the first few days when she was alone in the garden, a moving shadow would always catch her eye from the doorway to the kitchen, which leads into the hallway and living room. The living room no one ever used except to hang laundry. But all over the walls are paintings from previous housemates, and this haunts her the most, papyrus? I don't know how to say that word. I'm so sorry. Scroll on the wall showing the Book of the Dead scene from Egyptian mythology. Her and her housemates have also heard sounds from this area, which sounds like the shuffling of feet. Many times they thought it was another housemate, but when they would go check, there was no one there. The scariest part of this story happened about 2 weeks ago. Her and a friend had just been joking together about the spirit, as they both had heard and experienced these noises. Her friend then went out for some drinks, and so she just stayed home by herself and decided to wash up all the dishes for when her housemates came home. She was in the middle of washing up when a little black cord flew at her from the direction of the doorway where she is always seeing the movement. It didn't fall downwards. It was as if it fell from something. It literally flew sideways and landed in the sink. She literally put the pot down that she was washing, backed away from the sink, went upstairs and locked herself in her room and didn't come out until someone came home. This next story comes from Dustin in Louisville, Kentucky. This is what he would like to call an afterlife experience. When he was about 9 or 10, he was swimming in his pool and was trying to swim between the ladder steps, but he realized his head was stuck and he couldn't get out. He ended up passing out, and when he did, he saw a bright light, and coming from the light was a human figure. And then someone said to him, "My name is Emily. I'm your guardian angel. Take my hand." When he touched her hand, he ended up above water and was fine. He said he's not really religious and never believed in this kind of stuff before, but because of his experience, the possibility might be there. This next story comes from Eileen, and I hope I said your name right, because it's spelt confusing. She used to work in a pub in BC. One day during her lunch break, she went to use the bathroom. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw something move up over the stall wall, which is creepy. She looked and saw 2 fingers, then hands, and then a young woman with brown hair tied in pigtails and in a red striped shirt looking down at her. Invasion of privacy. She gasped and then shouted, "Boo," and vanished into thin air. She unlocked the stall and ran into the next one and searched the entire bathroom, but no one was there. When she came out of the bathroom, her coworker actually saw her, stopped her, and said to her, "Looks like you saw a ghost." This last story comes from Gemini in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Her dad and brother had just left the house, and her brother's door was shut and the lights were off. She went upstairs to use the bathroom and his door was actually wide open. She thought it was a draft, so she just pushed it aside, didn't think much about it. She ended up having to leave to go to her mom, so she went upstairs to get some shoes from her room. His lights were on. She actually called her brother to find out if he left his lights on, and he did not. And she ended up feeling uneasy, scared, and so she immediately left. That's it for your stories this week. Stay tuned for next Wednesday for 10 more stories. If you would like to submit your personal paranormal ghost story, please go down to the description below this video, and there's a little info, and there's info on how you can enter your story. And any stories that are submitted through comments or messages here on YouTube or comments or messages on Facebook do not count. They must be submitted to the email address I have listed down below. That is just the basic and easiest way for me to keep all of these organized. So please follow the directions down below because I would love to share your story. I hope you enjoyed these. Stay tuned for next week, and I love you guys. Bye!